what makes us the same? Our humanity. Our individual collective search for meaning and fulfillment and achievement. We all want to achieve, we all want to feel like we're doing meaningful work. And we all want to thrive. We all want to be seen, heard, acknowledged, accepted, and validated. Everybody across the board. So you're here today because you have an interest in advancing women and minorities in the workplace. You're here to learn more about being effective leaders and make the necessary changes to change the status quo. So what we're going to talk about next is the ways that you can see opportunities for change in your workplace, see opportunities for changing others, and most importantly, the opportunities for changing yourself in your behaviors and your leadership. We need to look within for the answers. All change begins with personal accountability, responsibility, and then action to make a change. We need to take courageous action to make the changes happen that we want to see. And this really starts with examining our personal beliefs and biases, examining then our behavior, questioning, doing the self-inquiry, questioning whether our beliefs and biases are helping us to be better leaders, throwing away what doesn't serve and keeping what does. So, does anybody have any questions or any input about this right now? How often do you go within and examine those biases or those behaviors of your own or situations where you've had the courage to speak up when something has happened? We can do some more work on that later. But here's one thing that we're going to look at right away: leadership stereotypes. Now this is really fun. What we think we know and what we see. Recently, this New York Times article came out and talked about the stereotypes of a leader. And organizational psychologists use this tool of asking people to draw a leader. And it's almost always men. Women and men draw a man. And it's not a surprise, right? I don't think anybody's surprised that that's what comes up. Because this is currently the norm. This is what we see. We believe what we see. So until we see differently, we're not going to necessarily see different stereotypes. I'll give you an example. Like, we don't even recognize our stereotypes. Last year, I had a doctor come to my house. I don't know if you're familiar with the service called Heal. It's like Doctors on Demand. It's fantastic. It's an app. It works with your insurance. It's great. I had a doctor come to my house, and I got a message saying the doctor and the nurse are going to come to your house. And these two guys show up. And it took me a second to, I was like, wait a second. Oh, that's the nurse. You see, and I caught myself and I thought, oh yeah, see, I thought a nurse was going to be a woman. But oddly, if a woman had showed up as a doctor, I would have thought that was totally normal. So, and I caught myself, and you catch yourself in these situations, and you're like, okay. So if I start seeing more, first of all, now I know that it gets anchored in my head. And then if I see more nurses, I don't know, on TV and movies, just around, it starts to change my perception and my stereotype and my own bias. So as we talk about getting more women in leadership roles, it may take time for that to change, to see some women come up in these drawings, but it's going to happen. And we all want it to change, and we have to be compassionate with ourselves also, in the sense that if things have been a certain way for a really long time, it's not going to change overnight. It's going to take some time. And if you catch yourself in stereotypes, be compassionate with yourself. Don't judge yourself. I mean, we're human, right? Like, this happens. And so it always comes back to the self. Like, what am I thinking? What am I doing? How am I acting? How am I going to make the change that I want to see? And we are in a time of radical transformation. This is a really important time in history. And the stereotypes are changing. And they change through role modeling as well. Today we have to be the agents of change to create that new paradigm and lead by example. And acknowledging things is great, taking action is great, and we really need to understand more about some of the psychological emotional, historical issues that have been holding women back. Because that also feeds the stereotypes. We need to rethink what we thought we knew with compassion and with a mindset of taking action. There are certain biases that affect women. And unfortunately, it's been to the detriment of women for a long time. Some of these biases affecting women, and I'm sure the women in the room can understand this, from a small age, right? All this begins with our kids, what we tell them they can be, should be, how to act. From a very young age, girls are taught and have been historically, be a good girl, be quiet, be helpful, stay out of the way. I know that was my upbringing a lot. And to put other people's needs ahead of their own. So as you grow up and you come into the workplace and your interactions with people, you bring that with you. So understanding that this is holding women back within themselves, but also outside of themselves, because there is an expectation of this is how a woman should act, or a girl. The history of survival, this is a really big one. Even just a couple of generations ago, women literally needed their husbands for survival. They didn't have financial independence, right? So there's the basic Maslow's hierarchy of needs of safety. And if you're fully dependent on another person for your safety, you're not necessarily going to rock the boat. In fact, you're not going to. There's still women today that don't have their own bank account. So that affects their ability to stand in their own power because they don't feel safe. And this is historically, right? Like, we recognizing what has happened, where things have been and where we're going is really important. The double bind, I don't know how many women in the room feel this or have felt this, but there's this perception that women can't be likable and competent. You can either one or the other, and this is research. Like, if you're likable, if you're nice, well, then you're not like a smart person. And if you're like the smart, driven woman, you're not nice. You're going to be one of those abrasive women. This happens. These are these biases that are in our culture, in our society, and maybe in our own heads. And that's why I'm inviting everybody to explore within themselves the backlash effect. If you're a driven woman, and I don't know how many has this happened to you, you have this. There's this backlash effect. You're assertive. No, you're abrasive. You shouldn't be like that. You know, there's this. And it makes you, and it can make some women go back and say, okay, well, if I want to keep my job or if I want to get ahead, then I need to play nice. And then they start playing small. And competitiveness amongst women, this is a really big one. And this goes back to that safety and that likability, because to get ahead when you're little, you're reading the room, you're reading people. And we're taught, and this is really sad, we're taught from when we're little to be competitive with each other. Men aren't that competitive with each other, men support each other a lot. But there is this culturally bred competitiveness. And I see that changing a little bit now. You have the BFF generation and you have things changing, but historically it's really been this competitiveness, which goes back to survival, because like, no, I want the husband. And I know I'm talking a few generations ago, but it's not that long ago. And then, these are our mothers and our grandmothers, and maybe even great-grandmothers that have had this influence on us. So this is all part of the fabric of what we live in. The other one is this critical feedback. And there are a lot of studies that unfortunately show that women receive a lot more personal critical feedback. You shouldn't be like this, you should back off, you should this, you should that, 30 times more than men. And they receive that criticism, personal criticism, equally by man or woman boss. So there's something in the organization of how it's been structured, of the culture of the organization, that is breeding in that mindset. And then prototyping, which goes back to that leadership slide. And we all do this, right? Do you look like what I expect? So when we, as, let's say as like animals, but as like humans, like at the basic level, when we walk into a room and we meet people, we're scanning and we're trying to understand, are you a friend or a foe? What kind of a person are you? And we label and we move things around in our heads and we just like, okay, do I feel safe around you? Are you competitive? You know, we do this constantly. And so we have expectations of what somebody should look like or act like. And so we prototype. So that can affect us too. And that's why this amazing movement of awareness needs to be brought back into ourselves so that we can model that change so that that prototyping also changes. Who do you think you are? How many of you have heard that? All the time. Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are? That for women is a big one. And that has a really big impact on behavior. And we're really looking to change this.